This morning we're just kind of walking through a vineyard that's being with some new canopy management techniques. As you can see that the fruit is very exposed, especially on what we call the morning side of the canopy, for air circulation to get around the clusters. That's very important, as well as spray penetration so we don't have any incidences of mildew or rot. This cane I got in my hand is approximately 3 feet long, and it has stopped growing. The shoot tip is still right here, but it's not going to advance. Same with this one here. I look at this as a well-balanced vine. There was no need to do any topping or cutting of the canes, which a lot of vineyardists do. Again, if the canopy and the crop load is in sync with each other, there's no need to do any topping or hedging. As you can see through here, this is Cabernet. We're in the lag phase of berry development. In other words, we're at the point where the berries are starting to size up. And I would say these are probably roughly 50% of their size. In other words, they'll double in size in the next month, irregardless of how much water is given or fertilizer or anything like that. It's just a natural thing that they'll do, is size up. The clusters will get much tighter as the berries start to fill in, much like putting basketballs in a box. You know, there won't be too much airspace between that. So that's why it's very important to have good aeration, good openness in the clusters, especially on the morning side. The reason we do the morning side of the canopies primarily is so that way in the late hot afternoons we're not exposing this fruit to potential sunburn. If we expose the fruit on the afternoon side, there's a risk of sunburn on the fruit, which is damaging. A balanced vineyard is the fact that if you do everything right, starting off with pruning. If you start and prune right and have well-spaced spurs locations, these arms and the spurs that were retained through the pruning season, and allowing for the two shoots to have a good space, then you do minimize a lot of your cultural needs. You don't have to spend a lot of time massaging the canopy and the crop load. And it has a lot of going on in here, but I don't see anything that's excessive. We see very, very few clusters on the ground, and that's just, again, for our early pass. Now, there may be another thinning pass coming up later on, what we call the green phase, and that's when the veraison, which is the color change or the berry softening phase, starts to happen, and the fruit actually starts to take on the reds and the pink colors. And at that point is a time that we'll come through once again and remove anything that's lagging behind, because it'll also lag behind at the time of harvest when it comes for maturity. And that'll probably happen sometime in late August at this point in time. But for now, the crew is just opening up the clusters, looking for things that are going to be obviously a problem, removing clusters on very short shoots that are not going to mature them as well. And even though these are very large clusters that are being dropped, they're too close together to their neighboring clusters, so we're doing a thinning pass just to remove the excess of crop and open up the clusters in their positions. You can see here there's a gentleman who is making sure there's good separation in the fruit zone. Any second crop that might be there, he's moving clusters around a little bit so they're not mounded up on each other. And sometimes they remove the wings or the shoulders that have developed as well. All the dry leaves that are on the ground floor is the pass that we did a couple of weeks ago by removing the excessive leaves on the morning side. Again, today we have a foggy day, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it helps with getting exposure into the canopy as the sun warms, and we get good airflow in the afternoon hours, and helps keep the clusters dry and rot-free. Also benefits in good spraying techniques, getting a good spray circulating around the berries, around the clusters, and inside the clusters. If there's a wall of leaves, it's very difficult to get that spray into the clusters. An example would be looking over here on this side. This side there was no leaves removed, and again it's apparent by the floor that there's very few leaves, or they were blown over by the afternoon winds. But if you can imagine having a much thicker layer of leaves in here, if the sun can't see the fruit, if you can't see the fruit, the sun can't see the fruit, and the spray pattern is not good to get inside. And this is not too bad because with our big conventional sprayers, we're blowing these leaves around a little bit anyway and getting the penetration that we need. But that's an example of the afternoon side of a vine that was not leafed at all, or laterals removed. I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, if the vine is balanced, you're not going to have a lot of laterals, and that's where growth comes out of this position here and becomes a nuisance. If the vines are balanced and you have good pruning decisions year in and year out, you generally don't have a lot of laterals removed, just some surface leaves that come off.